Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session, the grant writing process, writing a work plan. The grant proposal process is often an extensive one that requires that the grant writer can complete several components. While grant applications often require a grant narrative, a tool that allows the writer to tell his or her organization's story, some applications also require the inclusion of a work plan. The work plan allows the writer to identify core project goals and objectives, as well as the activities that need to occur in order to meet each objective. This workshop will focus on teaching participants about the purpose of a work plan, as well as how to draft one. By the end of the session, participants will define what a work plan is, describe the purpose of a work plan, and identify the components of a SMART objective. Some funders require that you include a work plan as a part of the grant proposal submission. Although the creation of a work plan may seem intimidating at the outset of your writing process, if you're able to organize your writing plan and clearly think through the steps of your proposal, it will likely not be as difficult as you may have first believed. Now, before we set out to look at some examples of a work plan, let's first learn what this type of plan consists of. A work plan is an outline of a set of goals and processes by which a team and/or a person can accomplish those goals. Now, it offers the reader a better understanding of the scope of the project, while enabling the author of the work plan to better organize project information. A key function of the work plan is to provide the writer of the proposal with the opportunity to break down the grant process into smaller, achievable tasks so that it's easier to digest information. And it can also help to easily identify any goals that will be accomplished during the project. What are the elements of a work plan? A work plan consists of goals, objectives, activities, timelines, responsible parties, and deliverables. The work plan can be constructed in a number of ways. However you construct your work plan, make certain that it is easy to understand. It should contain a space for goals. You should then insert objectives under each designated goal. The objectives will be conducted in order to achieve each goal. For each objective, you then need to create a space for activities. These activities will need to be conducted in order to achieve each objective. In addition to space for goals, objectives, and activities, you will need to include space for timelines, designated parties, or the individuals responsible for these activities, and deliverables, the data that will be collected, and other topics. Let's first take a look at goals. Before you start your draft the project narrative section of your proposal, take some time to consider what goals you hope to achieve with your project's implementation and what the anticipated outcomes will be. Set clear goals and objectives so that you're able to convincingly convey to your readers what the purpose of your project will be. Why have you decided to undertake this project? Why is it important? As you sit down to try and draft the goals of your project, answer the questions: what is the purpose of the project? What is the problem that you would like to address? What is your community's need? A goal defines what the project hopes to achieve. The goal is the mission of the project. It's a statement about what you want to accomplish. Before you can start to create a work plan, you must determine your goals and objectives. Goals and objectives are related in that they both are things you hope to accomplish. The goals are general, while objectives tend to be a little bit more specific. The goals should focus on the big picture of your project. As you determine the objectives, list the desired ultimate outcome of your work plan and be sure to keep it broad. Think of the goals as the result or expected purposes from the project. When you establish goals, you want to make sure to try and delineate what accomplishments you anticipate over the duration of the project. These goals should be clear and they should relate back to the problem statement that you established at the outset, the vision that you have for your project. After you decide which goals are actually feasible, you may then need to also distinguish which of these should be regarded as short, mid, or long-term goals. You set your goals and you then achieve these goals through your objectives and activities. The next element of a work plan is the objective. After you set a goal, you must establish a group of objectives for each goal. As you think of potential objectives, first consider these questions. What are you trying to accomplish? What do you need to do to accomplish this objective? How much change would you like to achieve? Could you describe this change with a measurable amount? Objectives are statements that are set to help you achieve your goals' deliverables. Now, objectives can be described as products or outcomes of activities that have been proposed. Objectives include those steps that are needed to accomplish a goal, and when you draft objectives, you should make certain that you are able to clarify what changes you expect to see as a result of your work. When drafting objectives, think broadly about what you're trying to do. What are you trying to accomplish? Objectives should be able to relate to the activities that you include in the evaluation and methodology sections of the grant. An effectively drafted objective should have the ability to link to the goal statements of the proposal. As well, it should be written utilizing terms of measurement while also specifying a range of time and a target audience that will be impacted. Effective objectives have the ability to contain answers to questions like who, what, where, when, and how much. Keep in mind that objectives should be drafted for each goal and they should be specific and tangible. For example, you should be able to check objectives off your list as you accomplish them. And an example might be interviewing 100 individuals or 100 patients. Objectives can be categorized into 3 categories: short, middle, and long-term objectives. When you draft your objectives, write using an active voice. Try to use action verbs like plan or write, measure, or similar words. Use SMART objectives when drafting your work plan. SMART is an acronym that can be used to describe objectives that are tangible and actionable. SMART objectives are specific, measurable, achievable, or audience or issue directed, relevant, or realistic and ambitious, and time-bound. A quick note about SMART objectives. Although we have defined a SMART objective as one that is specific, measurable, attainable, or achievable, relevant, and time-bound, you may come across different meanings for this acronym. For some, the A in SMART will stand for achievable. For this, like attainable, we want to ask, are we able to achieve this action in the project's designated timeline? As well, you may see that the A in SMART will stand for audience or issue directed. For this, be sure to determine who the audience is and use the name of the audience when drafting the objective. For instance, if you want to understand the impact of a breast cancer education program on the knowledge levels of African American women who are residents of Harlem, New York, you can be sure to specify this in your objective. For R, you may see the term realistic used instead of relevant. For realistic, which is similar to the word attainable, you want to ask, what true changes can be expected about an issue in the proposed time frame? Specific answers the questions, what exactly are we going to do for whom? What population will you serve? What actions will you utilize? Specific refers to objectives that are clearly identified and well-defined. What action or what change should occur in order to achieve the outcome? Select verbs that will help you describe the desired change. Use action words when writing objectives because objectives should be observable and measurable. Use words like define, discuss, maybe translate, schedule, or revise, formulate, propose, arrange, collect, organize. Measurable answers the question, is it quantifiable and can we measure it? Can you count the results? Measurable indicates those objectives that are able to be measured in a way to demonstrate some level of impact or success. How can you measure any changes? Use values like numbers or percentages to describe changes. For example, instead of writing the objective, improve the health outcomes of people in South Carolina in 2020, you can write decrease the cases of HIV/AIDS in newborn babies in South Carolina by 25% by the year 2020. If you wish to measure a change in an outcome, you will need to have an idea of the start or baseline measure. With regard to achievable, this aspect of an objective answers the questions, are we able to achieve this action in the project's designated timeline? Will you be able to accomplish your objectives in a specified period of time? Objectives should be within reach for your team or program, considering available resources and time. Objectives that are feasible and those that are achievable should be able to be accomplished. The project should have realistic expectations that objectives can be attained considering any existing constraints. These types of objectives that are achievable should also be realistic given the resources that are available. Consider these questions as you try to set project objectives. How can this objective be accomplished? Given the available time frame that has been set, can this objective be achieved? Should the project be scaled up or down? What resources will help us achieve this objective? Do you have access to these resources? And what limitations or constraints might stand in your way or prevent you from achieving your objectives? With regard to audience or issue directed objectives, those are more related to determining who the audience is. Use the name of the audience when describing the issue. Now let's think about the relevant aspect of the objectives. Will this objective have an effect on the desired goal or strategy? Are the methods used relevant for the objective that you are trying to accomplish? Make certain that there is a clear relationship between the two. Objectives should be certain to try to align with the project's overarching goals. The objectives should relate in some way to the vision of the project. Additionally, relevance is important in another way. If an objective is relevant or important to your organization's actual mission, it will be supported by the leadership of your organization and receive a greater level of buy-in from staff members whose efforts may be essential to the successful completion of your project. Now, is the objective relevant for the project that you are trying to complete? Make certain that there is a clear relationship between the two. Measuring the height of teens is not important if the program objective is to assess any changes in mental health services that are offered to adults. So make sure that your objectives are relevant. With regard to realistic and ambitious, like the time-bound criterion, realistic and ambitious answers the question, what true changes can be expected about an issue in the proposed time frame? The time-bound aspect of the SMART objective answers the question, when will this objective be accomplished, and or when will we know we are done? Based on what is currently known, when is the change expected? Objectives should be able to be achieved within a designated period of time. Keep in mind the selected time frame should be optimal. It shouldn't be too short because this may make completion unfeasible, or it shouldn't be too long, which may lead to procrastination. List the target dates for objectives and for the project's end. Now let's take a look at activities. When you think of activities or the activities that must be completed in order to accomplish each objective, think of these questions. What activities will take place in order to accomplish your project goals? Activities are the actions or events that will be taken to achieve an objective. When drafting your project narrative, be sure to include information about any activities that will be conducted or any efforts that you may have to make. You have specific goals and objectives in mind, but how will you achieve them? What activities will need to be conducted in order for you to meet a goal or achieve an objective? When you create a work plan, you need to include all of the activities that will need to occur in order to accomplish each objective. If, for instance, you want to increase breast cancer knowledge of a sample of women, one of the activities that may need to occur is the creation of a breast cancer education program, as well as the creation of breast cancer education materials, and the development and conduct of breast cancer education seminars throughout a community. These are just a few of the activities that you might have to conduct in order to achieve that objective. When drafting your activities, keep the following tips in mind. Ensure that you will have adequate time to complete all activities, and build in extra time in your timeline to ensure that you have enough time. When drafting a work plan, try to keep the relationship between the goals, the objectives, and the activities in mind. You should draft each of the project's primary goals, and then you should develop 3 to 4 objectives for each goal. You should then draft 3 to 4 activities for each of those objectives. Use the goal to develop 3 or 4 specific and measurable objectives, along with 3 or 4 activities for each objective. This may result in a work plan ranging from 1 to 5 pages. Keep in mind that with the inclusion of each additional goal in your work plan, you will then have to add objectives for each goal, and then activities for each of those objectives. The inclusion of additional goals can have the effect of making the work plan much longer and potentially confusing for both you and anyone reviewing your proposal. Now let's take a look at the importance of timelines. What is the timeline that you have set to accomplish each activity? How will you determine how much time you need to complete each activity? Timelines are important because they help to provide information about when proposed project activities will be completed. Before you start work on the work plan, you should determine the project's timeline. Review the activities that will be carried out in order to meet the goal and objectives that have been set. Use of a simplified format to show activities and timeframes for completion is helpful. This information can then be entered into the work plan. Once you have determined the project's goals, the project's objectives, and activities, you also need to determine who's going to be responsible for accomplishing which of these items, who's going to be responsible for accomplishing each of the designated activities. Responsible parties are the individuals who will be assigned the task of completing the activities. During this process, you should select one or more individuals who will be assigned each of the specified tasks. This is important even if a team of individuals is actually responsible for carrying out the tasks together. By assigning the task to one person, this step helps with the project's organization. This designated person can serve as a type of point person. By assigning one person the task, it helps with accountability. This strategy will help to ensure that even if a team or a few individuals work together on a task, there will always be one point person who is responsible for ensuring that the task is completed. This accountability helps to ensure that tasks are accomplished in a timely manner. Now we can move on from responsible parties to the next element of the work plan, deliverables. So as we talk about deliverables, you want to think about the question, what do you plan to accomplish? The term deliverables is a project management term, and it's often been used to describe maybe products or services that must be provided upon the completion of a project. So if you think about deliverables, keep in mind that deliverables can be tangible or intangible. The information that is provided offers information on the results of your activities. So examples might include a cancer education brochure, or it could be some type of service that's provided. It could be a health education curriculum or a breast cancer education program. What are the deliverables of your project or for your project? What do you plan to accomplish? This information provides information on the results of your activities. So now that we know all of the elements of the work plan, let's try to work on determining what a work plan template is. Work plan templates can help to make the planning of projects more organized and efficient. The templates can display activities and tasks, which individuals are responsible for completing the task, the target completion dates for all tasks, and the templates can also identify all responsible parties for tasks. Now that you have determined what the project's goals, objectives, and activities will be, it's time to take this information along with the expected timelines, responsible parties, and deliverables and organize it in a way that it will be easy to follow. So work plan template is useful for this type of process. Work plan templates can help to make the planning of projects more organized and efficient. The template can do this by displaying activities and tasks. You may also use a template that includes goals and objectives. Although templates differ in format and organization, most typically tend to provide a way to display information about which activities will occur, as well as what the target dates are for the completion of activities, and which parties will be responsible for carrying out these activities. So let's take a look at some examples of how work plans might be organized. So this example allows you to list the primary goal at the left-hand top of the page. The same area includes a section for you to list an objective. Under that objective is a space where you can list the key activities that need to be conducted to meet this objective, as well as any responsible staff and the time frame for the completion of each activity. As you move to the middle of the page, you'll note another space where you can list a second objective. As with the first objective, the second objective is linked to the goal at the top of the page. This middle section provides space for you to list key activities that you will need to be conducted for Objective 2. Now you can also include information about the staff members who will be responsible for carrying out these activities, as well as the time frame. So here's another example of a work plan template. This work plan example provides a space for you to list your goal at the top of the page, and then under that line is a space for anticipated measurable outcomes. The illustration then includes a table where you can list the major objectives that are associated with that particular goal, any key tasks that may have to be conducted, the lead person or whoever the responsible party is, and then the start and end times for each project. So for this example, the table on this slide provides activities that will be completed for just one objective. So this example also lists activities or tasks that need to be completed for each objective. For this example, the tasks are grouped by topics like baseline survey, stakeholder engagement, or recruitment and training. Within the baseline survey, you can see that there are 6 tasks: design survey, recruit data collectors, collect data, enter data, analyze data, and write report. Column 2 lists the individuals who are responsible for each of these tasks. And then the third column includes a space where you can include the status of each task, and that's whether it's currently complete, it might possibly be in progress, or it may even be overdue. The last column provides a space where a timeline can be included with expected timeframes for each task. So now that we've looked at some examples of templates and learned a little bit about how to construct a work plan, let's switch gears a little bit and discuss some tips for writing a work plan. The first is to not procrastinate. Make sure that you finish your proposal well before the deadline. Now, although some people may feel that they work well under pressure, if you wait and work too closely to the deadline, there's a greater likelihood that you will make mistakes, or you might not have the time that you need to slowly proofread or have someone else proofread the information that you've put together, or you might experience unexpected technological errors, problems with your computer, problems with your internet connection. You might even miss the deadline. Find a good proofreader. When you give the final draft to someone who can proofread the document, try to make certain that that person has good attention to detail. This will assist with proofreading. Also, you should try to make certain that this person is a good writer, that he or she possesses good grammar and good spelling skills. It would also be helpful if this individual has no idea about what the proposal is about. So when the person reads the proposal, it will be important to see if he or she even understands what you're trying to convey. He or she may be able to take note and determine if the explanation for the proposed grant is logically explained. If the individual does not, then it may be necessary for you to return to the drawing board and try to modify the content of the proposal. You also want to be sure to select the most appropriate proofreader. Once you have finished reviewing and modifying drafts, give the final version to someone who has not seen the draft before. If there's an individual who's able to put a fresh set of eyes to the finished draft, it will be easier for him or her to quickly pick out any errors like grammar, formatting, or spelling, or even inconsistencies in language. So you might have used, say, for instance, the term program manager in one part of your proposal, and then in another part of the narrative, you may start to switch terms and use the term program director, maybe in the budget listing. And if you have someone who is paying attention to detail, they may be able to kind of pick up on these inconsistencies. Compare your final draft to the submission guidelines. Compare the final draft of the proposal to the RFP, that's request for proposal requirements. Make certain that you have followed requirements for items like font size. You want to make certain that you followed rules for character or word limits, formatting, section headers, requirement, attachments, anything like that. So there is one additional tip to consider. And with each time you edit the proposal, you may find that it's more and more difficult for you to easily spot any types of inconsistencies between the goals in the text and then the goals that you might have listed in your work plan. Be aware of this because although you may miss these inconsistencies, if a reviewer of your proposal comes across, they might be able to quickly and easily spot them. If the work plan is compact, it'll be more advisable. And if it's compact, it'll be easier for you to pick up on any types of inconsistencies. Not only does it cut down on the likelihood of any types of continuity errors, but it will allow you to summarize the steps of project implementation in a more organized fashion. As a result, this approach will make it easier for potential funders to read through the plan quickly. So errors of continuity sometimes occur, and this is basically there might be a greater possibility of errors or discrepancies between what you actually list in the work plan and then what you might include in the proposal narrative. You may notice that the proposal narrative is written in a manner so that your goals or your objectives and activities are listed at different points throughout the narrative section. There may be included in the budget, in the logic model, or in the sections of the narrative. Because of this, it will be important for you to carefully review the proposal so that you can check to make certain that those primary goals that are included in the narrative are also included in your work plan. If you're able to do this, then the goal in the proposal will be consistent with the goals that you have listed in the work plan. If you find that drafting a work plan is too intimidating, You might find it useful to try and create a draft of the work plan before you start writing. So taking this approach will help you to organize your proposal narrative, and it will also help to ensure that the goals in your work plan are consistent with the goals that are included throughout the proposal narrative. Those who are more comfortable with writing work plans may find that it is preferred, or it's a preferred approach to draft the work plan after the second or third proposal draft has been written. So as we kind of wrap up, think about the idea of the relationship between goals, objectives, and activities. Remember, it's important not to confuse goals and objectives and activities. The goal is an overall statement of intent. The objectives are specific, measurable, and time-frame products or outcomes of activities that have been proposed. And activities are ways of accomplishing these objectives. For example, conducting individual assessments or conducting interviews. Remember that as you add each goal, you will then have to draft a series of objectives for each goal. And then you will have to go back and draft a series of activities for each of those objectives. As you add more goals, you have to keep in mind that this can create the possibility of errors and make it much more difficult and confusing for you. So it might be advisable just to try to have as few goals as possible, even just one overall statement of intent or one overarching goal, and then select a group of objectives that you'll use for that goal, and then also come back and select a group of activities for each of those objectives. I'd like to thank you all for attending today's session. And now, if you all have any questions, we can take a little time for a question and answer session.